Hey guys, Pete here. This is going to be my top moments video for Twin Peaks The Return Part 11, which had a lot of moments in it. For me, I don't know about you guys. Quick spoiler warning, if you haven't watched episode 3, part 11, you're going to want to stop watching this video now. Check my playlist for Twin Peaks videos on all the prior episodes. So yeah, as mentioned, there are a bunch of moments in this. I shy away from saying things like this is the best episode yet because they're so varied. What I will say is this was an awesome ride, this particular episode. I really enjoyed it, so let's jump right into it. First big moment for me was Miriam. We saw some kids playing catch. It had that feeling that they're going to find something or something's going to happen, and it was Miriam. One of those cool scenes where you know something's going to happen, you're not sure what it is, so it's really kind of hanging on the end of your seat. And like I mentioned in my 10 things you might have missed video, there was a definite possibility that Miriam wouldn't be dead, and sure enough, she's still alive. The next big moment was Becky's freak out. She's hysterical in her trailer. She calls up Shelly at the Double R. She needs a car. She lies and says it's Steven and that he's hurt, so Shelly drives straight over. Before she gets there, Becky grabs a gun from under the couch. She comes out right away when Shelly pulls up, takes the keys, jumps in the car, and then as she's driving off, Shelly jumps on the hood of the car. Shelly's red shoes play a big part here, like you can't help but notice them. And when Becky throws her off the hood, carefully, I guess, in the sense of, she waited till she got to a grassy area, we see Shelly's shoes fly off. The next big moment was Carl Rod. He comes over, asks what's going on, and like a boss, he just pulls out this whistle. I guess it's a whistle. And a Volkswagen van pulls up to take them away like it was on call, waiting for his whistle. So they take off down the road. She's calling Norma, and he hears her say that, why don't you just call Bobby? And Carl jumps into action once again and pulls out the CB and gets on the switchboard over at the sheriff's department. So the next big moment, I think, at least for me, was that we find out that Shelly is actually Shelly Briggs. We weren't really sure how that all played out, but it's pretty clear now that she's no longer Shelly Johnson. She's Shelly Briggs. We don't know the status of their relationship at this moment, but Becky is definitely their daughter. Next big moment is the next thing that happens. Becky ends up at an apartment building. She's screaming at a door. The neighbor says they just left. She screams, and then she empties the gun's clip into the front door. There's kind of a shaky view of the hallway that takes us down and around and down some steps, and we see that Steven's there hiding with another girl. The next big moment is the sequence of events that happens in Buckhorn. We see a couple cars pull up. We see that in one we have Albert, Tammy, Gordon, and Diane. They get out. In the second one, we see that Hastings there. He's being escorted by Detective Mackley. Tammy figures out what he did the last time he was there because they're in the place where he saw Major Briggs. Gordon and Albert approach. We hear the sound. We see like a woodsman fade in and out. They see it too. And then the next big moment is that Gordon moves ahead of Albert a bit closer to the house, and we see this vortex kind of thing open in the sky. Things get distorted around him, but we see as it pulls back that nobody else can see this except for him and Albert, who are inside the perimeter of the yard there. So we see a shot of some woodsmen in his vision, I guess you could call it. And just as he's about to disappear, Albert grabs him and pulls him back. When he does that, the sky goes back to normal. Albert says, "I guess we found out." And Gordon replies, "We sure did, Albert." The next big moment is that Ruth Davenport's body popped back up, and we find out, marked with some coordinates on her arm. And then Diane is sitting over smoking, looking at the car, and we see another shadowy woodsman that goes in and out of sight, and we get the idea that Diane probably sees it, but I don't know if it's clear if she's like, oh yeah, there's one of those, like, it's something she's seen before, or if she's sort of in disbelief. Either way, the next big moment is that we see the detective. He sort of gets a shock. He doesn't know what's happening. And then something happens and he gets freaked out. He gets out of the car. We see the other people come over. He calls for backup and we hear Diane say, "There's no backup for this." And we see that the top half of Bill Hastings' head is completely blown off. And the next big moment for sure, which I'm guessing this is an instant Twin Peaks classic here, but after they all sort of settle down a second, Gordon looks in and says, "He's dead." So that was awesome. Back at the Double R, we see that the whole Bobby Briggs family is together there. Becky is upset. They're talking about her situation with Steven, which I'll get more into in the recap and review. But for now, the next big moment is that Red shows up. Red, the drug smuggling guy that we saw a few episodes back, and instantly Shelly brightens up. So they are together, we assume. They definitely know each other well and are intimate. And poor Bobby, man, he just looks heartbroken sitting there. And it is mysterious in a way. Like, we really don't know how this all got to where it is. But yeah, Bobby looks really hurt over the idea that Shelly has this new guy. And we know in the back of our mind that he's the worst kind of guy from what we've seen. Anyways, we can't linger too much on Bobby and his hurt feelings because the next big moment happens right away and we see that a gunshot rings out, a bullet comes flying through the window, everyone ducks down and Bobby goes outside. Kind of the whole time whenever he's moving, I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna die, they're not gonna know where Jackrabbit's palace is and all this, so it's a pretty intense scene. There's this crazy honking going on in the background that doesn't stop. Anyways, we find out that it's a kid who found a gun in the backseat of their minivan there and he fired off the gun and the honking doesn't stop. So the next big moment comes when Bobby finally goes around to ask the woman to stop. And this is another thing that I'll have to get into in much more detail in the recap and review, but this woman's upset. She is saying things like, "We're late, we have to go to dinner, why is this happening? Her aunt is coming over and she hasn't seen her for quite some time and she's sick." And at first we don't see anything whenever this is happening. We just see this woman and wonder who she's talking about. And then the next big moment is that this person, who I guess is a woman, a young woman, it's hard to tell honestly, but she pops up and she's puking. And like puking everywhere. And she looks like a zombie. I mean, I don't know a better word to describe what's happening here. And I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, we all saw it. And that is the moment. This kid or woman or young woman or whatever puking in the passenger seat. Bobby's look on his face. And then we just cut over to the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department where we see Frank Truman and Hawk. So the next big moment there is Hawk's living map that he pulls out. So he says that the information that Briggs gave them got them thinking, and it'll start to make a lot more sense when he explains his map. So he has this map. He says it's very old, but it always stays current. It's like a living thing. He points out where, listening post Alpha is, Briggs Station on Blue Pine Mountain. He says it's a very revered and sacred site. He shows him some symbols, a campfire, but that's not really fire. It's a fire symbol. Like a type of fire, like modern day electricity. We see corn, which is supposed to be fertility, but it's black, which means it's diseased, unnatural, death. And then he says if you put these two symbols together, you get this, which Truman says black fire, but we get no description beyond that. Then the next big moment is that Frank asks about the symbol that we've seen on Briggs' paper and on the ace that Evil Coop had way back. And Hawk just says you don't ever want to know about that. Never. So the next big deal is that Margaret Lanterman, the log lady, calls on the phone. They have a quick back and forth. She asks what's going on. He says, "It's just like you said. I'm sorry. I should have let you know." She asks him what he found. He says, "I can't tell you that." Then she says, "My log is afraid of fire. There's fire where you are going. Hawk, there is fire where you're going." So definitely mysterious. We don't find out anything for sure there. And again, I'll look at this a lot closer in the next video. Back in Buckhorn, we see that Gordon's hand is shaking a lot. He's, he calls it a cat on a hot tin roof. It's never happened, or this has never done this before. They look at the picture of Ruth's body. They look at the coordinates. It sort of looks like Diane's trying to memorize them because she's mouthing them as they're looking. But Albert tells us that the last numbers are smudged, so they don't know for sure where it is. The next big moment is we get some talk about the Woodsmen. They mentioned that they saw the shadowy one when they first got there to the location. Albert said he looked like a homeless man with a beard. And this kind of triggers Diane into the next big moment where she says she might have seen something like that getting out of the car. But then Mackley says, I was in the car, and then she just backs off. So she's doing shady stuff, of course. And for the most part, for the scope of this video, we'll leave that whole situation there. Then we go back to Dougie's office, where the first big moment for me there was that, Val and Bud calls him into his office, but Phil, the coffee guy, answers, and he's like, yeah, I'll bring him over. And the first big moment there was him luring Dougie Coop with the coffee to get him over there. So they get over there, and we get a little bit of info about what's going on. Bushnell's basically figured out that, something's going on, and it's tied to organized crime and possibly law enforcement. He ends up telling that, Dougie Coop, that the Mitchums have gotten screwed over here. They're not the ones that are calling the shots. And he set up a meeting with him and them, and he'll be delivering a $30 million check. So on the way out, the next big moment, of course, was Mike. We see Mike appear to Dougie Coop sort of on the right side of the building in a different, I don't know what it was, it's a shop, I guess. Dougie heads over there. Then we see him getting put into the car by Bushnell, and now he's got a box. So we find out that Jim Belushi has had a dream, and it's bothering. Rodney Mitchum, on the other hand, is very pumped up to kill Dougie. So they get out to the site in the middle of nowhere. Of course, since Dougie Coop doesn't do anything, he doesn't resist the idea that he's being taken to a secret meeting in the middle of the desert. And we get to the next big moment where, hey, if he's got this one thing in this box, we have to not kill him. He's on our side. He's not our enemy. So there's all this anticipation. And then we see Rodney say, is that a cherry pie in that box? They look inside. Sure enough, it is. They also frisk Dougie. So they find the $30 million check. And all of a sudden, Dougie's their best friend. So they head to a restaurant, and the final big moments all come here. Dougie Coop, Rodney, and Benjamin all sit down. The Mitchums are very excited. We see Dougie respond to the music a little bit differently. Like, he almost looks like he's coming out of it a bit. There's sort of that feeling hanging over the whole meeting, like, is something going to happen here? He drinks some alcohol that seems to have an effect on him in some way or another. We get a cameo from the lady slot addict, the Mr. Jackpot's woman. Good to know that she's doing better now. We get Sandy, Candy, and Mandy. Once again, Candy sort of steals the show for a minute with her strange behavior that's somehow super compelling at the same time. You just really want to know what's going on with her. The Mitchum brothers are fantastic. I really like this pair. I mentioned that in the last video. They're fun to watch. As they're sitting there and all this is going on, the cherry pie is presented, and it looks like they all gloriously enjoy it as they sit there and the piano player plays. So yeah, I'm going to cut this short right now. I want to jump right into the recap and review. I got to do a rewatch and add to my notes. It was like writing a book, taking notes on this. But super fun episode. One of the most horrifying episodes in the first half, but then switches gears and becomes totally fun. Lot to think about. Talk to me in the comments and let me know what you're thinking about so that I can put some of that stuff into the recap and review. Awesome Blue Rose feeling stuff with Gordon, Albert, and Diane. So yeah, let's leave it there. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter and hit me up over there and on my other social media accounts, my Facebook page and my Instagram account. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.